Hey, Uncle Mark. I learned a thing this week. I talked about it a little bit.
Impossible.
I know, it doesn't seem likely, but it can happen occasionally. I talked about it a little bit on this week's Thank God I'm Atheist. And that thing that I learned is that, so on the other, so there's the Dinosaur National Monument here in Utah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's right next to the Colorado border. And on the other side of that is a town called Dinosaur, Colorado.
Right.
And one of the big owners of land out there that is producing dinosaur fossils as we speak is Answers in Genesis.
Oh.
I just want you to know that the Allosaurus that we saw at the fucking Creation Museum, and I might be stepping all over something that Doug was wanting to talk about. I'm going to shut my mouth and say, hey, Doug, talk to us about whatever you're going to talk to us about.
Dan is tap dancing all over my punchline. No, it's funny that you just found that out because I think we probably read the same article.
Okay.
And that's funny because, look, some listeners have asked if we're ever afraid of running out of subjects for our show. If we'll ever reach the point where there will be no more cults or Bible stories or woo to fuel our podcast. Well, let me put it to you guys this way. I was watching primetime TV the other night, and a commercial came on for the Flawless Contour, a vibrating rose quartz facial roller that channels the power of crystal to make those nagging wrinkles go away.
What the fuck were you watching?
Like regular TV.
Yeah.
It was just on. Yeah.
They still have that? Is that a thing?
I was
that
watching
still
Falcon
exists?
Crest like I do every Saturday.
I was watching Murder, She Wrote.
So no, it turns out that we are an astonishingly stupid species, and we're going to be here to chronicle it all until the sun explodes.
Yeah.
So to that point, today we're going to look at two opposing sides in a debate that future generations will look back on and say, so that's why we didn't survive. Today we'll be talking about how two different groups of Christians are grappling with the existence of dinosaurs. So let me set the scene. Earlier this summer, I drove to a remote part of our large state outside of a very small town in central western Utah called Delta. You guys know Delta.
Beautiful Delta.
Delta, by the way, is the birthplace of which celebrity? Any guesses?
Chrissy Teigen.
Chrissy Teigen.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Can you believe that?
And amazingly, that's not on the town welcome sign.
No.
Yeah, you'd think.
It should be. Anyway, I was
don't
trilobite hunting.
I don't think Delta has a welcome sign, Doug. I've been there.
It's not welcoming.
No,
Not
they
so
don't want
much.
you there.
Yeah.
So the reason I was down there is I was trilobite hunting, and I had a pretty successful little jaunt. I found about a dozen specimens of varying quality and at least as many impressions. One of them is here.
Yeah, you brought it to the studio here.
There is something very humbling and beautiful to cracking open a rock to reveal a stone memory of a little creature that lived and died 500 million years ago, and to ponder the knowledge
Allegedly.
right?
Yes.
And to ponder the knowledge that we are very literally related. All this is to provide some context for the headfirst dive we're about to take into the shallow end of the dumb pool. So, first up, we'll be talking about an organization I found on YouTube because my algorithm has apparently become sentient and has taken a disliking to me. So, let's start off by talking about Christians Against Dinosaurs, aka CAD. So, like I said, I found this group on YouTube, and most of their videos, of which there are only a handful, are of one young woman named Kristen. And being named Kristen, she is, of course, white, who spends most of these videos in serious need of a scrunchie and taking the whole cutesy, oh, I went there shtick a little too far. So she expounds on what she calls the dinosaur lie by doing little experiments that you too can do at home.
I'm sure I can.
The dinosaur lie. Okay, great.
This doesn't sound like the work of someone who has gotten her doctorate degree in science.
These little experiments expose the conspiracy that is as vast as it is pointless. So I watched all of her videos, and uncles, this is some powerful stupid. But this powerful stupid has not built a taxpayer-funded ark in Kentucky or shipped kids off to reparative therapy. This is just a very ignorant girl saying very dumb things on YouTube. Perhaps, I thought, the target was a little too small ball for the full firepower that is the how-to heretics disdain. But then, in her video on aerodynamics, more on that in a minute, she said the following, quote, I wanted to specifically talk about the lies that these paleontologists have been feeding you your entire lives in exchange for
what is aerodynamics? Okay.
Calm yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Let him get to it.
We'll get there.
Okay.
She says, quote, I wanted to specifically talk about the lies that these paleontologists have been feeding you your entire lives in exchange for millions of dollars, a pat on the back by the liberally biased media, and a high five from all the feminists who want to kill babies and scream at their bodies or whatever the heck they scream at.
You know all those millionaire paleontologists out there?
Big paleontology.
Yeah, after that quote, I'm like, you know what? You're fair game. So
Driving their McLarens down to the dig.
her name is Kristen. I don't know her last name. I didn't want to know. So
trying
before
to
we
look her
proceed,
up. Yeah.
think about the 24 karat.
Look up the YouTube channel.
Yeah, go to YouTube and look up Christians Against Dinosaurs if you must.
I just want to see your face.
Before we proceed, think about the 24 karat bat shittery contained in that previous statement and the worldview it leaks from. Bat shittery, by the way, at least according to spellcheck, an actual word.
Okay, great.
She believes that paleontologists are just in it for the sweet, sweet bling that universities are doling out, and that in order to justify their salaries, they have concocted a global hoax to invent the dinosaur fossil record. And on top of the mad stacks that these uber-capitalist paleontologists are pulling in, they get attaboys from the global media conspiracy, who's in on it, and high fives from the group of people least likely on Earth to high five, feminists. Feminists who's
I'm
only...
not touching that. I'm going to let
And
Doug sit
Uncle
with
Mark.
that one.
I don't high five.
That's right.
I don't do it.
Feminists, by the way, whose only joy in life is having expensive, invasive, painful, and increasingly harder to get procedures done because they can't let the sun go down on a not murdered fetus. So
true.
Oh, and Kristen, if you're still wondering what feminists scream at their bodies, it's the lyrics to Alone by Heart. So
I love that song so much.
Okay. And I know that all our listeners that are filling out their conspiracy bingo cards right now have their pen hovering over the Jews square. Well, since Kristen managed to squeeze in the global media conspiracy, I'm going to say partial credit. So,
Can I just say that I just typed into Google Christians Against, and the list that pops up, I'm just going to read it to you.
sure.
Christians Against Tattoos, against poverty, that's nice.
Well,
Christians
that's a
Against Slipknot. Christians, I don't know if you're ready for this one. Christians Against Seedless Watermelons. Not sure where that one comes in, but I'm clicking it later. Christians Against Christian Nationalism. That's nice. We need more of them. And then Christians Against Dinosaurs.
Oh, well, at least they rank. All right. So firstly, let's dig into Christians Against Dinosaurs itself, and then we'll take a look at their work product. CAD is an organization with a logo. In this case, a Stegosaurus inside the Ghostbusters no sign,
Yeah.
a website, and even Facebook and Twitter accounts. Their website is mostly reposted articles from other anti-dinosaur groups and broken links. Their last post on Twitter, I love this, was a while back, August of 2018, and it reads, quote, "Sorry we have been AWOL for a while. A shift in administrative positions meant a temporary loss of password."
Aw,
I know, it's kind of sad.
that's hard.
Over on Facebook, they are much more active. Here they fight their war on dinosaurs with dank memes and tips, this is true, on what stores have dino-free toy aisles so they can shop there and not contribute to the
Oh my
conspiracy.
God.
It's for real.
I love it.
They lobby for dinosaurs to be removed from school curriculums, but this lobbying is done only via social media. Yeah, it's a pretty meager population, and luckily they've had no success. So, incidentally, one of their main targets, the main targets for their ire is Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because he's doing the opposite thing.
exactly. And we'll see old Ham Chop here in a second.
And he is part of, if my guess is not way off the mark, what their website that I've just navigated to terms the Museum Industrial Complex.
Amazing.
Oh my God. But for the raw, uncut twaddle you're craving, it's back on YouTube where they really shine. As I said at the beginning, their channel only has 17 videos on it. Some are reposts, some are just 30-second clips of someone burning toy dinosaurs. But 6 of them are our old pal Kristen, derping pearls of wisdom about the dinosaur lie, blissfully unaware of the existence of second takes. So, in one video, she takes a bucket of broken plaster and dumps it out on a table to make the argument that with millions of dollars on the line, paleontologists will turn that debris into whatever they need to keep the gravy train running.
Oh my God.
I know. In another, she lays out the reasons to reject the dinosaur lie, mainly that people should believe in the Bible, which according to her has been indisputed, her word, for thousands of years.
Disputed.
Rather than believe in paleontology that's only been around for 10 or 15 years.
10 or 15.
Okay.
Okay.
So, even in the context of this kind of hammer to the forehead stupid, one video stands out. She makes the argument that a pterosaur, the enormous flying dinosaur, could not possibly have existed with and flown with leathery wings because if you throw a leather jacket out the window, it does not fly away.
Wow.
To that airtight logic, I would simply say bats.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I said, she really tries to come off as a coquettish rapscallion, but there's a real edge of hostility to her that's kind of unnerving. And like all apologists, there is an astounding arrogance to their ignorance. And of course, all of the problems that she claims to disprove about dinosaurs, the volume of food they had to eat, the aerodynamics of flying dinosaurs, the heftiness of the skeleton of the biggest dinosaurs, these all have explanations. Go to a museum.
Yeah.
Ask a paleontologist. They will walk you through it.
Yeah.
Just because you don't understand a thing doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
They'll walk you through
like,
their
for example, the
carefully
clitoris.
worded set of lies is what they'll walk you through.
The huge global international lie that is paleontology. What does she think dinosaur bones are?
It's a hoax. It's all a hoax. Okay.
It's all okay.
So I mean, that's enough of this,
Yeah.
right? And just to start where we began, a few months ago, I drove to a remote part of the Southwest, hiked up to a cliff face, pried free a large section of rock, and then chiseled that down to smaller sections until I found fossilized echoes of a quarter-size extinct bug. Dear uncles, that is one hell of a conspiracy.
No,
it's big. It's big.
What you did was very carefully chisel out until you had a nice little fresco of a trilobite.
So, part 2 of our Dinosaur Chronicles comes from an article a few days ago in The New Yorker by Charles Bethia. Originally, I was going to talk about CAD, but like I said at the beginning, our podcast suffers from an embarrassment of riches, and this other dinosaur hit my browser as though God himself was a fan. So, this article spins a strange yarn about dinosaur bones, as complex as it is stupid. The story's pretty serpentine, so I'll do my best to keep it simple. Let's start with North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows. For those of you lucky enough not to know who this dim meat stick is, he is one of the collection of far right-wing conspiracy nuts and a member of the House Freedom Caucus, who you see clips of on Twitter all the time, still frothing about Benghazi and Hillary Clinton's kill list.
Yeah.
President Trump retweets him fairly often, and he apparently was almost chief of staff. So, pardon me.
So a genius is what you're saying.
Super smart guy. Now, because this is a tale about evangelical Christians, strap in for a heavy dose of fraud, dishonesty, petty cruelty, and why not some statutory rape. 3 years ago, Meadows sold a piece of property in Colorado, Dinosaur, Colorado, to our old friends at Answers in Genesis, led by the aforementioned Ham Chop, for $200,000. Meadows, of course, did not disclose this sale on his congressional financial disclosure forms.
Of course.
It turns out that this is a bit of a pattern for Meadows because, and I did not see this coming, Christians are liars. So,
Who could have predicted?
the story of this property goes back to 2002 and a fossil finding expedition by a group of young Earth creationists called the Dragon's Den Dig. This expedition was led by Doug Phillips, son of Howard Phillips, who founded the Constitution Party and was a leading figure in the religious right. Okay. Doug also worked as a lawyer for the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, or NAMBLA, and founded Vision Forum Ministries, which we'll talk about in a second. Phillips' partner was a guy called Peter DeRosa, a homeschool enthusiast himself. Okay. I know it's getting a little complicated, but the expedition was for homeschooling families and was billed as, quote, a fresh approach to ecology from the creationist perspective. Okay.
It's so funny because homeschooling I have nothing against, except that 99% of the time, especially in this country, homeschooling is code for I pulled my kids out of school because they were teaching them shit wasn't Christian.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So along for the ride on this expedition was one Mark Meadows and his young daughter Haley. Vision Forum Ministries made a documentary about this expedition with the inscrutable title Raising the Allosaur, the true story of a rare dinosaur and the homeschoolers who found it. So the documentary shows how young Haley Meadows discovered the skull of an Allosaurus half buried in the forest among leaves and branches. Mark Meadows describes how they stumbled across the skull in the kind of detail that sounds suspiciously like you made it up. That's called foreshadowing. According to the documentary, the kids will go on to discover not only an Allosaurus skull, but 12 feet of its spine, a stegosaurus, and a 120-foot-long sauropod, all in the span of 4 days. Surprise!
Paleontology! It works!
It turns out this was all bullshit. The bones were excavated on that property a couple years earlier by another group of young creationists, led by a guy named Joe Taylor. Phillips and DeRosa.
Sorry, you said young creationists, but what you meant was young Earth
Young
creationists.
Earth creationists, thank
not
you. Yeah,
children,
yeah.
but
Exactly.
grown folk.
Grown folk with puny brains.
They were old young Earth creationists. That's what
Right.
you're saying.
Phillips and DeRosa acquired the fossils and then staged them to not only look like those plucky kids found them, but also to make them look like they hadn't been there that long.
Right.
So instead of pulling them out of like a cliff face or a hillside, they were
Instead of chiseling them out of the rock of the earth.
right here in the forest. Here's a dinosaur bone.
They're just
Yeah,
lying around.
It sounds like the little thing you go to at the Natural History Museum where they just
Totally.
they put some sand over the bones in the sandbox, right? And the kids
Exactly.
dig them out. That's what they did.
So Joe Taylor, the first guy who found the bones, was unaware that the bones he had excavated had been staged and were now subject of a documentary that failed to mention him. So he sued. This is great. In 2004, Taylor and DeRosa entered into, and this is real, a Christian mediation process in which an independent adjudicator attempts to resolve their conflict using biblical principles.
Oh my God!
Like-
So they cut the dinosaur in half, is what you're saying?
And the documentary.
Jesus. So unsurprisingly, this process left Taylor, the original finder of the bones, with nothing. Anyway, back to the story. Mark Meadows bought the Colorado property a few months after the bullshit expedition, apparently in an attempt to keep actual paleontologists from getting access to any further fossils found at the site. And probably to help, prevent them from exposing the lie.
Right.
Meadows eventually disallowed DeRosa from operating on the property because he had lied about his paleontology credentials. Doug Phillips, who, in case you've forgotten, was one of the organizers of the Dragon's Den dig, resigned from Vision Forum Ministries in 2013 for having an affair with his nanny, whom he had been grooming from the time she was just 15. Although Phillips claims that he did not have sex with her until she was an adult, claiming while she was a minor, quote, "We did not know each other in the biblical sense."
Oh, wow.
Okay,
We
so-
just made out a few times and maybe I grabbed her boobs.
As all of the legal wrangling about the documentary and the proprietorship of the bones wound down, the Allosaur skeleton was eventually donated to the Creation Museum, where it occupies a place of honor in the lobby, which we have seen.
Yeah.
On the plaque below the skeleton, it reads, quote, "The intact skeleton of this Allosaur is a testimony to the catastrophic, rapid burial which is confirmation of the global flood a few thousand years ago as recorded in the Bible."
It's funny because when I read that article, I actually was like, wait a minute. I know that they're saying that it's a flood, but this is pretty high. And I actually did a comparison between the elevation of Dinosaur, Colorado, and Mount Ararat. Is that where
Yeah.
the Ark was meant to have landed?
Yeah.
And they're about the same. I don't know. It's just funny to me that all of this is stupid.
Stupid. And all of this brings us full circle to where we began. Meadows sold the property to Answers in Genesis, probably to put this whole sordid mess behind him. But like I said, he failed to disclose this sale as required by the Ethics in Government Act. Try and say that without laughing. So Meadows, it turns out, is a bit of a connoisseur of violating this act. Last year, Meadows was sanctioned for how he handled a sexual harassment claim in his office. It turns out he used taxpayer money to pay off the harasser.
Of course. What?
Yeah.
To pay him off for what?
So he had to kind of like fire him, but then he didn't want to just put him on the street.
Sure.
So he gave him like a nice nest egg, a nice golden parachute.
That's lovely.
Think
Yeah,
about the level
that's
of derp it would take to be sanctioned for inappropriate action by this fucking Congress. So
Right.
I must say, when every single character in a particular saga turns out to be dishonest, morally repugnant, vindictive, and clearly incredibly stupid,
And a little
it
rapey.
does call, and a little rapey, it does call into question the validity of the cause that they are lying, cheating, and stealing to prop up.
Well,
I
with
don't think you can draw a connection between those things, Doug. I don't think that's
all I can say is you got your choice. You can either decide that dinosaurs are a global conspiracy and they never existed and they're all just fake.
Yeah.
Or they were buried by the flood and that confirms that God is true. Either way, Christians are right and paleontologists are fucking liars.
Well, and these two groups, by the way, hate each other. So here's hoping that, there's another extinction event coming up soon.
Well, thanks, Uncle Doug. I feel dumber just having heard all of that.
You're welcome.
Let's move along.